we've talked on the YouTube channel about Driver, and I wanted to talk about in our first topic of the day, guys, about Driver 6. Technically speaking, would be the next continuation of this series, and we haven't seen a continuation of this series in quite some time, so let's talk about it. Driver, guys, is a game that spans from all the way back to 1999. Had a number of games, though. We had the first Driver, of course, that came out in 1999, and then basically followed by Driver 2 and Driver 3, one coming out in 2000, the next coming out in 2004, and then we had Driver Parallel Lines, which was technically speaking the fourth game in the main entry of the series, and then Driver 76 was a portable game on the PlayStation Portable. And then, of course, you had Driver San Francisco, which was the fifth Driver game that was, that was created for the franchise. And then the last couple of games, that being Driver Renegade 3D and Driver Speedboat Paradise, were both games that essentially one came out on the Nintendo 3DS, and the last one was a free-to-play game on iOS and Android. So we haven't seen anything. Let's just say in the main series, we haven't seen anything, since essentially 2011, guys, as far as the main series is concerned in Driver. And then Driver in general, anything that concerns the Driver franchise, we haven't seen anything since 2014. So main series, it's been a really long time. And then just in general, it's been since 2014. So it's been quite a substantial period of time. Now, what we'll talk about here is where is Driver 6 at this point, because I think it kind of comes down to a few different things, guys. If you consider Driver San Francisco to be the last game in this franchise that kind of came out back in 2011, you could see the Metacritic reviews for it. Metacritic reviews were actually decent. I mean, they were average to favorable reviews. You're talking 80s, pretty much anywhere between your 60 to 80 range, and that's not bad at all. That's pretty good. Now, of course, it's not as good as, maybe earlier on in the series, but it's pretty good for what it is. I would say that Parallel Lines was actually your very, fair to average game in the main series, but San Francisco I thought was pretty good. Now, in an article that was written by Sean Farlow of Gazette Review, remember Driver for the PS1, that game was one of the most fun driving titles for the console. The first game of the Driver series made its debut for the PlayStation in 1999. The title was later released for Game Boy Color and PC. For those who have never heard or played it, the game follows a police detective named John Tanner. The first game is the best-selling of the series and gave us a preview of the future with the freedom to explore a city and its popular locations. The series got even better after the release of Driver 2, which was similar to the first one, but brought an interesting feature to gamers around the world. The game, of course, brought back John Tanner and added a new detective, Tobias Jones. And then the third installment was released for the PS2 and Xbox in 2004. This one added weapons and featured great locations once again, that being Miami, Nice, and Istanbul. The title was later released for the Game Boy Advance and PC. Now, here's my number one thing, guys, about this franchise that I gotta say kind of bothered me. That was the fact of the matter that they were adding these games to like the Game Boy Color and to Nintendo 3DS and adding titles like that. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me personally. I thought that they should have just kind of continued to make additions or continuations of the main franchise instead of kind of trying to add little things here and there. It's always fine to add mobile games and add, things of that nature, but you should be consistently adding continuations of the main franchise over time as well. And so it kind of felt like they were kind of dipping their toes in too many different areas, and so they weren't like a master of one thing. They were kind of trying to be, a craftsman in multiple different areas, and it just didn't seem to work out. But that was kind of like one of the first things that I feel has resulted in us not getting a Driver 6 at this point. The fourth game in the series, Driver Parallel Lines, was released 2 years later and focused more on driving. The story did not follow John Tanner this time, and all of the game's story takes place in New York City. Critics liked the game more than the previous release and gave it better reviews, but it did not sell well. So number 2, guys, this one, that being Parallel Lines, at the end of the day, didn't sell well. And what it really comes down to, guys, is these studios are thinking to themselves, it really all comes down to money. That's what it is. It's a business, right? So at the end of the day, they probably looked at Parallel Lines and thought, look, I mean, we'll give this one last shot, see what happens. Maybe it'll do well, maybe it won't, but this didn't sell very well for us, so we need to kind of keep an eye on, how many more of these games we make. The series then made an appearance on the PSP with Driver 76. The game, set in New York City, was the first in the series to be published by Ubisoft after they acquired the studio. And then the fifth Driver game, Driver San Francisco, was the center of many rumors, but the title was finally confirmed at E3 2010 and released a year later. The game follows Tanner and removed the ability to get out of the car. Instead, a new feature called Shift was introduced. The feature gave players the option to change to any car at any time. Driver San Francisco received good reviews and sold well. 2 other games have been released since Driver San Francisco, that being Driver Renegade 3D and Driver Speedboat Paradise. Driver 3D is an exclusive for the Nintendo 3DS, and Driver Speedboat Paradise is a smartphone game available for iOS and Android. A new game for the console has not been confirmed, but fans of the series are waiting. The latest consoles have brought games with beautiful graphics, so a new Driver title would stand out if it featured new or even past locations. So here's the third thing, guys, that really, like, the third, I feel like the big 3 things that kind of just hurt this series, and this is why we haven't seen another Driver game. Number 3 is that in Driver San Francisco, even though it sold well, I feel like it really, the fact that you weren't able to get out of your car really kind of hurt the experience a lot in Driver San Francisco. I feel like, it kind of just took away a lot of that open world, that feeling of being able to just explore and such, just on foot or by driving. And so I think that was like that third thing that came up that really hurt this franchise in a substantial way, and that's part of the reason why we haven't seen a Driver 6 at this point. Now, as far as the film is concerned, guys, there have been talks of a film since 2002, but it wasn't until 2007 when Driver and its budget of $48 million almost got started on a movie. The studio was almost ready to start working on the film when a waterfront revitalization project made the studio move. The studio decided to put the film on hold, and nothing has been said about it since. Now, so as far as the film goes, I believe there was a Driver, or maybe it was called Drive, with Ryan Gosling that came out, and that was a pretty good movie. It was obviously not anything related to the Driver games, but nonetheless, guys, I think that, this was a series that was even looking to make a movie. So when you look at that, obviously they got something special. If you're planning on maybe doing a movie and you're, adding a decent amount of games here, this is a franchise that's spanned for, a good course of time. So my thoughts are that where's Driver 6 at this point? It has been on the back burner. It's been something that definitely could come out at some point or another, but I think it was really 3 big things, and even some people might argue that they weren't necessarily big things, but 3 things that really have kind of held Driver back in a way that hasn't helped it move forward and get continuations of the franchise. Now, I would love to see a Driver 6 come out on PS5, Xbox Series X, PC. I think that would be absolutely awesome. I think it would be great for the next-gen consoles to have Driver come back. This is a game that I definitely think should come back. It should coexist with other open-world games, of course, in the genre and in gaming in general. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Where do you guys think Driver 6 is at this point? I think it's in a limbo state. It's on the back burner right now, but I definitely think it's possible that this game does come back at some point or another. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And for more Driver 6 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV.